Greetings, programs, and welcome back to the Awesome Friday podcast, the only podcast where you get to hear us review 2 movies a week. We do own that format, patent pending, trademark, blah, 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 blah. My name is Matthew, and with me, as usual, is Simon. Say hello, Simon.
Hello, and if you're dazzled, I know this is a radio podcast, but Matt, if you're dazzled by the sight of my clean teeth, it's because I've just returned from the dentist. That's my interesting life.
That's exactly what the film lovers come here to hear about. So,
well, this is the first dentist trip as an adult where I haven't been up to my eyeballs in Ativan. So I feel, the second. This is the second. So I feel like that's a personal victory.
I don't know if because it's only like your 4th or 5th time to the dentist as an adult?
I don't want to. I. Sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear the question. I had what some may want to call oral trauma. Has it?
That's just phrasing.
I had a shit ton of teeth out when I was younger by a really shitty set of dentists in England. I went to a dentist.
Hang on.
Shut up.
Bad dentistry in England?
I went to a dentist in Canada for the first time here, and I was talking to him, and I was like, and he was just looking at stuff and just getting angry to himself. And I was like, I haven't had a good time with dentists. Like, they took a lot of teeth out. And he just went, it's because in British dentistry is like barbarian. We would never do anything like this here. Like, can you understand like how terrible? And that was it for the next 5 minutes. And so apparently Canadian dentistry does not view British dentistry to the highest standards.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't really realize this until a few years ago, but apparently it's because all of the stereotypes are correct.
Well,
unless you're like very wealthy, unless you're very wealthy.
I don't know about that, because the stereotype of English people having buck teeth all over the place, that's certainly true for many people. It's true for many Americans as well. It's true for many, many other people.
Well, but in America it's true because nobody can afford it.
But, well, I mean, that's true, but the result of all this, and also thanks to my genetics, my canine teeth actually grew in front of my other teeth. So I had full on, for about 2 years, I had actual werewolf teeth, like in front of my jaw,
like actual like vampire fangs.
Well, top and bottom set, so I could crack nuts with them. I could put like a nut between them and crack them down. And they took all of those out. They took like 8 teeth at one time, and I wasn't even asleep for that. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You could crack a nut between them. Title of your sex tape. Anyway. No, title of my sex tape is definitely oral trauma. So I went to after much haranguing by my wife, I went to the dentist, and I was like, look, cards on the table. I'm a big baby boy. Like, I hate this. I hate you. I hate this. I have a terrible gag reflex. There's another title of my sex tape. I don't want to be here. Title of my sex tape. And the dentist was like, well, do you want some Ativan? And I'm like, can I have some Ativan? He's like, sure, how much do you want? And I'm like, some? Or like, he's like, I'll just give you like 10 tablets. I'm like, just take half and see how you do. So, no, take 2. Take 2 and see how you do. So next time I went to the dentist, I took 2 Ativan. And you're meant to take them an hour before you go. And I've never taken Ativan before. I haven't really done any kind of drugs. I did speed once because someone spiked my drink. I don't smoke marijuana. I drink, and I smoked tobacco, but beyond that, like, I haven't done any normal drugs. So my body's a temple, sort of Taj Mahal in shape, but still drug free. And just for the hour going up to this appointment, I'm like, wow, maybe my metabolism's so fast, maybe nothing's happening. And then the world started just like sinking, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And I remember being taken in by the arm to the dentist. I'm like, hey man, what are we doing today? And then he laid me down, and I sat there and I listened to a podcast. I'm like, I'm just going to listen. He's like, yeah, you carry on. I was in there, and then I came home, and completely tripping my balls off, and I put on I put on Spiritualized. I don't know if you know Spiritualized. They're a British alt, like electro band from the late 90s.
Yep.
And I put on Flight of Nova, which is basically a game where you're a space trucker. You fly between space stations and a planet. And like I've never tripped balls before, but I was there and I could feel my face hurting from my smile. I'm lying like on the couch for the next 2 hours with music on almost in the dark, flying around in space. I was like, oh, it turns out Ativan's really cool. I sure hope I don't get addicted to that. So each time I've taken Ativan, but then my wife went away for a few days, my filling fell out, so I had to go back unmedicated, and I got through it. So now I'm like, the problem with Ativan is that it kind of takes away the whole rest of your day, and I certainly couldn't record a podcast, so I went unmedicated. So I'm a big boy,
what you're
brave
saying
boy.
is you've graduated to adult dentistry, adult competent dentistry.
I feel like, yes, the dentistry, they're so nice. I've got a cleaner called Aaron who's just lovely. The dentists are like lovely. Everyone's just lovely, and that's even unmedicated. So it's nice. It's nice to be back in the cycle of just once every 6 months.
That's that's very much what our movie loving audience is here to hear.
Oh, come on. They're here for the banter. They're here for the no homo love between two straight men. And like with the fact we talk about movies is secondary, I'm sure.
That's actually probably true. We do you are my platonic life partner. It's true.
Yeah, baby. Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
So I suppose we should talk about movies, unless you want to tell me how you are in a long rambling monologue about oral care, title of your sex tape.
No, actually, because I have simultaneously a lot going on and very little going on. It's a weird combination of lots of boring, stupid shit that is not interesting, even to me. So I don't want to talk about it.
Sure thing, buddy.
I do, I said on a podcast before that, my goal for the year was to start getting back into physical media. Title of my sex tape. So I went from owning 0 Criterion editions to now owning like 8 or 10 in the span of like a month. So I should really stop that.
Should you though?
No, probably not. It's just expensive. Everything's expensive. Inflation's a bitch, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I dug out, like, I actually have a shelf full of DVDs. So I found like my old I have the Godfather special edition DVDs from like 20 years ago.
Ooh.
And a special edition of Ben-Hur from like 20 years ago. And a few other things like that. I still have, I think we talked about even last week, my special edition of Total Recall in the metal Mars shaped tin, which is a DVD from,
that's
again,
pretty
like,
sweet.
It's like a 20 year, it's like a 10-year anniversary. The movie came out in like 92, so I think this is like a 10-year anniversary in 2002. And that just made me crumble into dust like I was one of the bad guys in an Indiana Jones movie. But yeah, I'm just watching movies. I just finished up coverage, so by the time you hear this, I will be finishing up my coverage of the Sundance Film Festival. I managed to actually cram in
exciting
6, or depending on how tonight and tomorrow go, 6 or 7 films, which is sort of more than I anticipated. And I will be recording a special episode with Rachel tomorrow because she also is attending Sundance. So look for that on the feed later in the week, or middle of the week, probably.
Oh,
yeah. Rachel, again, I don't know why we have to keep pointing this out, but she's basically part of the crew now. She's just on the show, and that's just how it's going to be.
Whether she likes it or not, we've adopted her, is what you're saying.
That's true. And she's also the editor of Exclaim, and it's not a coincidence that I now have a byline on Exclaim. So if you want to hear about the new Apple TV Plus TV series Shrinking, I have a review that got published. I guess Friday morning it got published. So there's a thing you can go read that I wrote that I got. It's
something feels wrong. Something feels very wrong about Harrison Ford in a light comedy TV show.
But he's so good. He's so good in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I think in large part because he's an old man now, and so a lot of his role is basically saying contemporary things incorrectly, and he's really, really good at that. Like just delivering those kinds of lines very deadpan, and having like the younger people in the cast. There's one younger person in the cast in particular who he interacts with a lot, and he'll say something and she'll be like, "That's not what that means." It's funny literally every time. But the show is
Cool.
good, and you should watch it, and you should read my review of said show. So go do that. I'll link it in the show notes.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about this week?
So this week we're starting out. This is, I think, our first week where we're talking about 2 new movies from this year. We're not catching up on anything. We're slightly catching up on one, but it's still a 2023 movie.
Well, I know. Is it yeah.
So the one movie premiered, like had its world premiere in December, but went wide, like was released to the general public in 2023. So it's a 2023 movie.
Right.
And the other is the new Netflix thing that came out this weekend. That's what we're going to start with.
Sorry.
I mean, it's a movie. It's a well-meaning movie. But we're going to talk about You People, which is from Kenya Barris and Jonah Hill, directed by Kenya Barris, co-written with Jonah Hill. Kenya Barris probably most famous for the show he made is called Blackish. And Jonah Hill famous for, at this point, being Jonah Hill. Yeah, where to start? The easiest way to describe this film is that it is a contemporary remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. That's it. That's the whole thing. Except instead of a young white woman bringing home a black man, it's a young black woman bringing home a white man. So it's kind of a remake of the remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, because this movie's been remade a couple of times. And Jonah Hill plays the white guy who meets the black girl, who's played by Lauren London. They meet and they fall in love and they decide to get married, and then Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays Jonah Hill's mother, and Eddie Murphy plays Lauren London's father, and hilarity ensues.
Occasionally, it does. Yes.
Occasionally, depending on your tolerance for this sort of thing. I'm not going to really go into too much detail on the plot. It pretty much goes exactly how you'd expect. They have, he can't meet anyone, she can't meet anyone. They meet each other. They fall in love. The parents don't like the dad doesn't like him, and the mother kind of loves her too much. And then they have a falling out, and then they get back together in the end. It's not rocket surgery, and I don't think we need to do that too much.
Rocket surgery.
But I mean, yeah, I'm gonna let you. So I think you like this film. I'm guessing slightly more than I did.
I did, or in that there's a lot of this film I didn't like, to be fair, but the stuff that I did like, I really, really liked, and primarily I really, really liked Jonah Hill and Lauren London as the 2 leads. I thought they were both great. I'm really interested in sort of where Jonah Hill is in his career right now, because he of course obviously started out Superbad as the fat funny one, and then he made some very, very good choices, I think, and he really surprised me on Wolf of Wall Street. But he's done a couple of dramatic roles as well. And this is the kind of role...
Moneyball before that as well.
Oh yeah, Moneyball's a great movie.
And he showed up in a ton of stuff as like supporting. Yeah. But always, you're right. He always sort of like the fat funny one.
Yeah. So he's funny in this as well, but he's not goofballing at all in this movie. He feels really, really genuine. He wrote this movie with the director, and I'd be very, very interested how much of the dialogue is improvised and then edited down, because a lot of the conversations between him, Lauren London, the girl he meets and falls in love with, and particularly Julia Louis-Dreyfus as well, who I love. I mean, I've got a massive crush on her, so I might be a little bit biased, but I love her as a performer, and she's a very talented improviser as well, and we know he is, and it just feels, there's some moments in the movie where it just feels so natural between Ezra and Amira, between Ezra and his mum, Shelley. And those are the parts of the movie that I really, really enjoyed because Lauren London and Jonah Hill really bounce off each other. They've got a really nice connection, I think. And it felt very real, kind of how they got together and stayed together. And, but on the flip side of that, I really, really, really thought, I'm not sure hate is the right word, but whatever they decided to do with Eddie Murphy's character was wrong. Like Lauren London's dad, like it stopped being about a race thing because they're a very active, proud black family, and so react to a white Jewish boy who's trying too hard. And also, Jonah Hill's Ezra has a podcast about the culture, so he has a podcast with his black best friend about exploring black culture, and so they're really suspicious of this white guy stealing black culture, which has literally never happened before. And so they are justified in that. And what I think is interesting is that their mistrust is justified, but Eddie Murphy's just an asshole. In fact, it's interesting because the whole crux of the movie, it's not really a spoiler, but this is kind of addressed really close to the end, that there's a difference between not being suspicious of a white person and being an asshole. And whereas you've got Ezra's parents, Julia Louis-Dreyfus and David Duchovny, who I thought was David Duchovny is so brilliant in this movie. And the problem is that they both have no idea how to talk to a black woman as a woman. They have to talk to her as a black person. So to show that they are allies, they go way too far. Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Okay, I gotta stop. It's
hang on. Oh,
Julia Louis
yeah?
Dreyfus.
Am I saying Louis-Dreyfus?
Yes.
Louis? It's Louis Dreyfus?
It is.
It's not Louis Dreyfus?
It is not.
Okay. Who did she marry? Mr. Louis?
I don't know, but it is.
Is that just common knowledge?
Louis Dreyfus. Yes, it is.
Is that common knowledge? So I've spent literally years saying Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Thank you for the correction.
You're welcome. You only said it 3 or 4 times on the record here, so it should be fine.
Well, no one heard it. Literally been saying it my whole life since I knew she existed. So Louis, excellent. And she basically overwhelms her with references to black culture to show that she's an ally. But David Duchovny, he just has an obsession with Exhibit. And it just keeps coming to this, like, everything is referenced to Exhibit's journey, which I found really funny. And he's really, again, he has no idea how to talk to Amira at all. And so in the, it's coming when they both stand up to the other's parents. Jonah Hill stands up and does his thing, and Lauren London talks about her thing, and the movie was kind of ruined for me with, I don't know what Eddie Murphy was doing with this performance. First of all, he's really understated. Sometimes he's almost mumbling. You can't actually hear what he's saying. But it doesn't feel like he's genuinely being a person. He's just trying to be the biggest asshole he could be, which is I just didn't like that part of the movie at all. Didn't work for me at all. I felt it stopped being about race then. It stopped being about a gentle exposure to the other race, and it felt like, what's that movie, Meet the Parents? It was just turned into Meet the Parents, where Eddie Murphy was just Robert De Niro.
Yeah, that's probably the part of the movie that worked the least for me as well. And I don't know if it's a letdown just because it's Eddie Murphy and he is very understated. And I might go even so far as to say a little flat.
No, I agree totally.
Because like normally he's so flamboyant, in this movie he's just not that. So I do kind of wonder if maybe it is an expectational letdown. But the bigger problem really is that the character is kind of a dick. He's kind of an asshole. And I do think actually one of the best scenes in the movie is the scene where Jonah Hill finally calls him out for it. At those 2 scenes, that sequence where they do stand up to their respective other parent is phenomenally well performed, I thought, by everyone involved, including Eddie Murphy, once he gets to the point of Jonah Hill basically telling him what's what.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no one better in the world than Julia Louis-Dreyfus for doing cringe face.
Yeah.
You know, there's no one who can make that smile that also says, "Oh shit, I fucked up."
Yeah.
You know, than Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and she does it. She has to do it a number of times in this movie because she's the overbearing Jewish mom who's way too like overcompensating in the like in every situation. And I thought she was really good. I didn't actually think I'm not going to say that David Duchovny was bad, but I do think he was clearly thinking he was in a different movie than he was, if that makes sense. You know, like,
I mean, he's
but
barely in it, though, to be
but he's
fair.
barely in it. This is the other problem that I really have with the movie is that you're right. Jonah Hill and Lauren London are both great. They're both really genuine, sincere performances. They're both really well fleshed out characters just through the way they interact, like not through any exposition, but through body language and the way they interact and the way they talk to one another. So even though a good portion of their relationship is sort of montaged over, they still feel like really well fleshed out human beings. And the dad, Eddie Murphy and Julie Louis-Dreyfus, are also reasonably well fleshed out, and literally everyone else could have been a cardboard cutout in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
David Duchovny is fine, but like it could have been anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a sequence with there's a bunch of people who cameo in this movie, and like Elliot Gould is in this movie, and he shows up for like 10 seconds and no lines. And like why would you waste a chance to have
Oh my
Elliot
god.
Gould in your movie?
Seriously, exactly what I was thinking after. Well, first of all, I thought Elliot Gould was dead. So seeing him in this movie was a shock. But I thought actually that can't be Elliot Gould because who uses Elliot Gould for like 10 seconds in total? Who
Yeah, and
who
and
does that?
this and the same thing. Like the most fleshed out of these cameos is probably Mike Epps, who does have a couple of scenes and
Mm-hmm.
does get to be the guy, like the inside man who says to Eddie Murphy, like, no, maybe you are being an asshole. But
Mm-hmm.
also like Rhea Perlman is in this, and she's a hilarious
Mm-hmm.
person, and she has about
Mm-hmm.
3 scenes and 4 lines total.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's just so many. Like Hal Linden is in this for like one line at the beginning. Anthony Anderson's in this for like one scene and 3 lines. And I get that it's cool that all these people are in this. And normally I'm the kind of guy who'd be like, "Did you see all the cameos?" But that only really works if the movie is great, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
otherwise it just feels like a bit of a waste. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, for a movie that's being billed as a romantic comedy, it is suitably romantic but not very funny. Like not very little of it really works. I do think, I'm on the team, like as with the aforementioned series Shrinking or Ted Lasso or plenty of other things. Like I think things like this can work better when they're being sincere than when they're being funny. But I do think they still have to be funny if that's what they're going for. You know what I mean?
I know, but romantic comedies generally are a more gentle kind of funny than laugh out loud funny. I think this
Nah,
movie,
I fully disagree. Like, no, the
uh,
best romantic comedies are laugh out loud funny. Like, unless there's
but
there's the
there's definitely
exceptions.
some
Like,
scenes. There's some
there's
scenes
definitely
between
there's
Jonah
like
and
yeah, there's definitely the like
Zoom.
when Harry even when Harry Met Sally like is laugh out, like that would be a gentle
Oh,
comedy. That is
Jesus!
laugh out loud funny.
You can't compare this movie to When Harry Met Sally.
I'll
You
compare it
can't.
to
You
anything I
can't make.
want.
Well, then, if we
I w-
compare it to Pacific Rim 1, there's a distinct lack of like dinosaurs in this movie. That would have
well,
been
there's a
funnier.
distinct lack of dinosaurs in both of those movies because the
Oh
bad guys are kaiju
god.
from another dimension. So if we're
No.
gonna like comparing movies, it's a fairly, I think, apples to apples comparison to look at other romantic comedies, and I think that Netflix has done a pretty good job with a few romantic comedies in the last few years. I just don't, and I don't think this one is bad. I didn't really connect with it, but like I still think it's probably see it for yourself and decide. But I would personally just rather watch Guess Who's Coming to Dinner Again. I wish we had just watched that and we're talking about a classic.
I haven't seen it. I should look that up.
Yeah, you should. It's a good movie. This is like fine, aggressively fine at best.
Maybe watch it for the initial scenes between Jonah Hill and Lauren London, I'd say. I really got a lot out of that. There's quite a nice section when they go from like first date to going steady, and how that builds is really nice. It doesn't feel like fake at all, especially as in his first date, he is trying to clearly be something he isn't, and then you actually see him soften up a bit and become a bit more genuine with her. Oh, Sidney Poitier, that and Catherine Hepburn, of course.
It's funny you say that too, because I would actually argue that it would be better to just watch assume the first half, because you can, like, from our description, you should be able to figure out what the first half is, and then just watch the back half, because most of the good performance stuff comes in the last act. And the first act I felt was quite shaky, and the second act was a bit like, and the whole thing is overlong. Like, it's almost two. It's only a couple minutes short of 2 hours long, and this is one of those ones where, like, I think maybe like a tight 90 or a tight 100 minutes might have been a better choice. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm usually the guy who says, like, let it go as long as it needs to go, man. But like this one
only needed to go 90.
Yeah,
to be fair.
It's a bit flabby.
I would say first half, because it's got less Eddie Murphy and Nia Long in it. Like, they're just rude. There's no more to their characters than rude, and I don't like rudeness as a way to greet someone.
I would say
there's no real aspect of like being suspicious or like, it would have been interesting. We've already known that Eddie Murphy's character is painted as this hyper real, hyper aware of culture person, but Nia Long, they could have written her to be like the intermediate, a bit more passive, a bit more nice.
They could have written her to be a character at all.
Okay. Cardboard, you say?
Yeah. I mean, I like Nia Long. I think she's a great actress, but she's not really doing very much in this film. She has less time than David Duchovny, who has basically no time at all, and that's only because, and he only has the time he has because he got a recurring gag, really. And I would say tune into the last act, just because it gives up all the pretenses of trying to be funny and just starts being like a story about two people. Like, it's basically from that point on, it's like maybe a dramedy if you're being generous. And I think that's a little easier to stomach, given that it's meant to be funny. Like, because it's just not very funny. Like, I didn't laugh. I think there's only one scene that I think I laughed at, and it wasn't because it was funny. It was because, I guess technically, yeah, it's funny, but it's because there's a scene where, like, Eddie Murphy brings Jonah Hill to a situation thinking he's going to be, like, destroyed by it. And then it turns out he's really good at that situation. And I'm not going to spoil it, but like that sequence I thought was really good. But that was really the only like really funny bit for me. I don't know. It's a shame, because like it is super well meaning, and I do think Jonah Hill is really good, and I do think Lauren London's really good, and I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus is really good, and I think Eddie Murphy was really probably doing exactly what was asked of him. Yeah, and I just don't think it was. I don't think it comes together at all. I would honestly rather watch, if I was going to recommend a remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I would say watch the one with Ashton Kutcher and Bernie Mac, because it's funny. I don't know if it's a good movie, but it's at least funny. Or maybe it isn't. I don't know. The movie's like 20 years old, and I haven't seen it in like 20 years. So.
I will say as well, technically this movie was not a well-made movie. Like, on some technical, I don't know how sensitive you are to shots being out of focus, or there's a shot transition screen, which is where like panels are scrubbed over each other, that feels like it came straight out of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in the 90s. Like, it just felt cheap, really cheap, and some of some of this film is not well made at all. So your mileage may vary, but that really bothers me actually.
Yeah, I noticed most of that too. I just didn't like, given that the rest of it didn't, like, that's again the kind of thing I can gloss over if the rest of it worked.
Yeah,
But
fair enough. It didn't.
it didn't, so I didn't.
So I did say you were oscillating between 2 and 3 stars. Where did you land on this in the end?
2. I'm giving it a 2.
Yeah, it's enough for a 3 for me. I did enjoy it a bit more than you. Evidently 1 star more than you. I think for me, it's a very, very just about a 3, and it's probably a high-ish 2 for you. So that's probably makes sense. But
No, I mean,
purely for
the reason I was oscillating is that, like, this is exactly the kind of movie that I used to just give a 2.5 to, because
right, yeah.
like I'm definitely not connecting with it. I think some people probably will, but in the end, like I didn't like. That's why I went to whole numbers only, because to keep me honest, I didn't really like this movie, so I'm giving it a 2.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
It's a 3 for the leads for me, and how they sort of bounce off each other in the first half. I like that.
Yeah, and that's fair.
So, Andy Rants on Netflix. If you have Netflix, you own this movie. That's the joy of the streaming model. You now have paid for this film, so
you don't own it. You just have access to it until they decide they don't want to pay the residuals anymore. But
that's true. Oh, they're not Warner. They usually keep things on.
Yeah, usually.
So far, anyway. So far. So yeah, it's there. It's there if you want it. What a box quote. It's there if you want it.
Yeah. Title of your sex tape.
Let's move on. Yeah, that was pretty accurate, actually. Me screaming at my wife.
Yeah, sounds about right. Well, let's move on to our second film of the night, which is our very slight catch up from the early part of January. We're going to talk about a movie that we both really liked, which is the killer robot movie M3gan, or if you prefer, M3gan.
Capital M3, capital G, capital A, lowercase n.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Directed by Gerard Johnstone and written by Akilah Cooper, with a story from Cooper and James Wan, and starring who's in this one? Allison Williams. Who's great.
He's fantastic.
And Violet McGraw, who you regular listeners will remember, she was in The Haunting of Hill House, which Simon still has not watched, as far as I know, because he's a giant wuss.
Come on, I watched this.
Yeah. This is not a scary movie though. Although she was also in Black Widow and Dr. Sleep and a few other things.
Okay.
Along with Ronnie Chiang, and then a young dancer named Amy Donald, and another young person called Jenna Davis, who are the body and voice of M3gan, respectively. And this is a movie where a young girl who's just lost her parents is given, like, her custody is taken by her aunt, played by Allison Williams. And Allison Williams happens to be a genius roboticist who works for a toy company and has been developing this young robot companion for children named M3gan, and she decides to use her grieving niece as a beta test, basically.
What could possibly go wrong?
And what could possibly go wrong? This is a film which is exactly the film that is being advertised. They have a robot, and as the robot gains awareness, it corrupts its core mission of protecting the young girl from harm by basically eventually turning to killing people. And it is a fucking blast from start to finish. It's a tight 102 minutes, and there's nary a wasted frame. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I'm not sure you can, because again, like every single beat of this movie, as soon as you see like, Chekhov's giant remote controlled robot in the first act, you exactly know what's going to happen with that robot. And every time, there's a nosy, angry neighbor with a
With a
mangy,
grumpy dog.
grumpy dog, and you know exactly what's going to happen to that dog. And Alice Williams and Violet McGraw sell every goddamn second of it. Every
Yeah.
second of it.
That's the key, isn't it, with this kind of film, is to be, the actors need to be in on it, and Alison Williams is actually in on it. And also, I really thought a big part of this were Brian Jordan Alvarez and Jen Brown as the other engineers of M3gan, who also give us, like, if we see that people are scared of the threat, then we are scared of the threat. And between the three of them, they have some really wonderful moments where they start working out that what they have built a monster that they possibly cannot control. And you're completely right in that it's such a well-made, well-written movie. I just want to say that first of all.
Yeah.
Like, Blumhouse is really good at making good movies. Like, their quality is very, very good at their films. And I mentioned in a last movie how I do find that I am quite sensitive to technical things not being good. But when they are good, like really good, it is a genuine like pleasure to see a well-made movie. And it's just written and edited and directed brilliantly and acted brilliantly. And you feel like it wants the audience to have a really good time, because it's not the kind of horror where you've got a threat and the threat scares you.
I would go so far as to say it's almost not even horror.
It's barely horror.
Like it's definitely horror, but like it's only barely horror, really.
Yeah, absolutely. There are moments in this film where you start rooting for the horror, when you're like, it's like rubbing your hands with glee. Oh, what's she gonna do now? Even though you don't hate the people that she's doing it to, well, most of them anyway.
Yeah,
some of them you do, but
I think the movie's actually really smart in that basically everyone she murders, you can basically be like, yeah, murder that person.
Yes,
just
murder the hell out of that child.
Murder the hell out of that person, M3gan. Like, yeah. The neighbor has an angry dog. Oh, I guess the neighbor's gonna die. Like,
and it's very interesting when the dog dies. Spoiler: the dog dies. You don't see it. Don't worry. In fact, the reason why this isn't really horrific things happening, but the camera pulls away. It's such a pleasure for me as well, because I don't like horrors that really revel in the blood and guts and gore and breaking arms and bones and things on screen. I don't find that pleasurable. In fact, I find it the opposite. M3gan's just, again, a brilliantly directed movie that the horror happens in the second after the camera cuts away. So your imagination does all the work. So usually things like dead space in the screening, someone's going to pop out. Usually that's a terrifying moment. But the weird thing is, like, and let's use the dog example. We all know the dog dies. Like, we should feel bad for the dog at this point. We should feel scared for the dog, but we're all like, she's coming, like, she comes. And when she does come, I really wish I'd seen this with a big drunk crowd of people, because I bet it plays like absolute gangbusters in front of everyone.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
And it's just a real pleasure. And of course, casting a dancer as the body of M3gan is an amazing choice, because there is so much uncanny valley with how she moves and how she turns her neck and her arms and her legs. And it is so cleverly done to make her kind of real, but not quite. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's an interesting blend of, like, there's lots of full body stuff where it is a person in a suit, basically. And there's lots of stuff where it's an animatronic head. And it's very rarely, like, there's obviously some CG happening for enhancements, but you can tell that most of it is, at least parts of it are happening in front of you. And that's pretty great. I mean, if I have a criticism, honestly, it's that this does feel like it was originally intended to have an R rating and was cut down. because it does, like, you could tell that that it's going to go places, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
think in a bad way. You know, I am much better with horror than I used to be fair. But
Mm-hmm.
you can definitely tell that, like, there was some creative stuff going on that got cut for the rating.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, because I think this is a pretty perfect gateway horror for anyone who's
Yeah.
not great with horror, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that if and anyone who is a fan or wants to make someone else a fan of the killer robot genre, because
Mm-hmm.
this is a great entry in that genre.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
No,
but
I agree. Yeah.
I do understand that there's perhaps like a director's cut or an extended cut with some of the stuff that's been cut out coming. I imagine we'll see that on home release, probably, and I do look forward to that. But it doesn't actually matter. Like, this is still a great time at the movies, and I had a blast watching it. And I would say that if you really wanted to see the, like, R-rated version of this, just go watch um, Malignant from last year, or year before last, I should say, which is not a killer robot movie, but is from a lot of the same people, the same production. You know, James Wan's production company, with James Wan directing, and it has a lot of very tonal similarities, except for that obviously it's R-rated, so it goes to a lot darker places.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like, the bad guy in that one is just as ridiculous, and moves really interestingly. And I can't recommend either of these films enough, really.
See, for me, it's stronger that it is cut down to meet the certificate. I don't need my horror to be horrific. Does that make sense? I don't need to see anything. My imagination is far more powerful, and it's so much more fun in this current state. Maybe is there a director's cut coming? Is that a thing that's happening?
I've someone mentioned something about it on Twitter, so I think
Right.
in a way where I don't have any knowledge of it, I think it probably yes. Because I
See,
think
I don't.
also
I.
this is a movie that got dumped in the first week of January, so I don't
Mhm,
think they necessarily had a ton of confidence in it.
mhm,
Um, uh, and then it did really critically really well. So I
mhm.
think box office has done quite well as also. So I think,
Yep.
probably speaking, yes, there'll be a director's cut, because this movie's made like $130 million on a $12 million budget. So, like,
Whoa, nice.
there's already a sequel been greenlit as well.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. All I want from the sequel, because there's a few moments in this where there's some spontaneous singing, and let me tell you, to have this doll singing, there's this wonderful mix of this is amazing and this is creepy as hell. I want the sequel to be a full-on original musical, like the whole. I want them just to go the whole shebang and just make it a full musical, because and cross that somewhere if you can picture Aphex Twins Come to Daddy video as well, maybe something on that level. Like, that's where I want Megan 2.0 to go. It's got tons of potential. It's got a great final frame. There's I've got one story criticism. There's one big thing that's shown at the beginning that should have been the payoff at the end and was not, and I don't know why it wasn't, and I can't say any more without spoiling. It's a minor thing, but
I'm
I'll
going to
tell
ask
you
you
off
about
air.
this off
Yeah,
air,
I'll
because
tell
I
you
don't know
off
what you're
air.
talking about.
Yeah, but it's a minor thing, and it's absolutely the kind of movie I'm going to buy and rewatch over and over and over, because it's just such a fun time, and it doesn't make you feel bad, even though there's a few like horrific bits, but really, a lot of it's in the imagination. A lot of it is threat rather than actual carrying out the threat, and it's just so brilliantly made. It was such a pleasure to watch this film.
Yeah, it's great, and I can't recommend it enough.
Yes,
It's a very strong start to 2023, and it
it really
is
is.
a very strong start to the horror prospects of 2023.
Hmm.
Um, and Allison Williams now has been in, like, she's I think pretty well established as a a bit of a horror icon, having previously starred in both Get Out and The Perfection, which I never saw the whole thing of. But she has what, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She's got 5 credits, 5 film credits, and 3 of them are horror movies. And
What's the other one?
She has a credit in a short film, and then she was in a film in 2020 called Horizon Line, Swedish film. Get Out and The Perfection are both, and this are all horror.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'll be sure to check that out.
Yeah.
That looks good. Horizon Line looks really interesting.
Yeah, it's Swedish apparently. The Nordic peoples make interesting movies.
Oh my god, she played Kate Middleton in Will and Kate before Happily Ever After. Is that her?
And what, have you actually seen that?
Yes. In 2011, I believe I watched part of it, yeah. Oh. And she was Peter Pan in Peter Pan Live.
Yeah, that I knew. Because that was after Girls. She's,
fantastic.
Her big breakout being Girls.
I wanna work through her filmography. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
Good. How many stars are you going with M3gan?
I will give M3gan 4 stars.
Yes, I'm also giving 4 stars. Yeah, I'm at 4 stars. A wonderful, fun-filled 4 stars, and I think I'm only not giving 5 because I really get the feeling, based on previous Blumhouse stuff, that they're really going to push the boat out for the sequel and make it even more crazy, and I think that's going to be a solid 5. So I need somewhere to go for the sequel. So this is a 4, and maybe now, Jason Blum, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are, I love Blumhouse. You once said that when you made some more money, if you were successful with projects, you would seriously move into development for Happy Death Day 3. I feel like you've made a ton of money in the last couple of years. You've been very successful. It's time for the Scooby Gang to get back together, and please give us the end to that trilogy. If you haven't seen Happy Death Day, this was yet another Matt I Told You So, which I avoided for a long time because I thought it sounded shit, and then I watched it and realized it wasn't. Then I watched the second one the next day, and I've been in love with those 2 movies ever since.
Yeah, and I did tell you so.
You did.
And then he also made Freaky, which I know you love as well.
Oh yeah,
also
Freaky's
pretty great. He actually, Christopher Landon, the writer-director of Happy Death Day, has another movie coming out this year called We Have a Ghost, which is meant to be...
Oh, is that him? Fantastic.
It's coming out later this year.
I've heard good things about that.
Yeah, I haven't heard very much, but it's him, and it's coming out in February on Netflix, so we will probably be covering it.
Yeah, boy.
Probably.
Okay. So yes, go watch M3gan if you can with a group. If it's still showing, I'm not sure it is, but
it is. It came out on demand, and it is technically still in theaters. Yeah. So if you have a chance, see it with a big group. But either way, I would fully recommend seeing it. 4 stars.
Yeah. 4 stars. Excellent.
Good.
So what have you got coming up apart from Sundance? Oh no, Sundance is done now, isn't it? So what have you got for next week? What do you want to watch? What's on your watch list?
I have no idea. I'm working through. My goal this year, one of my other goals this year, is to watch more Indian cinema. So I'm in the midst of watching Padmavat, which I'm very much enjoying. And I also just sent out a thing to a bunch of people I know from the who are Indian, and said, like, tell me what to watch. So I'm assembling a watch list for myself.
Nice.
And I don't know. We were gonna watch Infinity Pool, but you said no. But I
you and me.
Yeah.
I thought you watched it last night.
I did watch it, but you pieced out on talking about it here.
Oh yeah, I'm not watching. I watched the trailer and it's like, I'm never ever going to watch that film.
Yeah,
but I felt the same about.
It's not exactly the film that's been advertised. So
is it good?
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good.
Okay. Excellent. I'm going to be finishing Station 11 very soon. I've got two and a half episodes left.
Yeah,
and that's been wonderful. So that's my week.
That's and you're about a year behind, so that makes sense. And you have the great pleasure of watching The Last of Us episode 3 as of the day this podcast comes out. So I look forward to your reaction to that, because it is.
Oh, that's your favorite episode, isn't it?
It's my favorite episode of the whole series, and because it's the best episode of the whole series.
Okay, I'm enjoying that so far. It's very good.
Yeah. Anywho, well, I think we're gonna wrap it up there. We will be back with a show about Sundance, myself and Rachel, and then Simon and I will be back next week with 2 other films. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to support us, consider giving us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. Or just hit that subscribe button. Smash that like button. Whatever the thing is you need to do, that's what we encourage you to do. And if you'd like to support us a little more directly, we have a Patreon and a Ko-fi, and those will both be linked in the show notes as well. You can find us on the socials, mainly Twitter, while it is still upright. Seems to be crumbling a little more daily. But Simon is at Temporary Pen. I am at Matthew AF, and we are at Awesome Friday CA. And I believe the same is true on Instagram, at least for Awesome Friday and for me. And we record this here in Vancouver on the unceded lands of the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and the Squamish peoples. And one more time, thank you so much for being here and for listening and for joining us on this Awesome Friday.
Thanks, bye.